How entrepreneurs can beat imposter syndrome. Welcome to the School of Self-Worth Live, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sam Osborne, the Self-Worth Guy. This is episode number 151, and today we got a special guest on the show. Her name is Carly Pepin, and she is all the way also from LA, and we're going to be saying hello to Carly in a minute and talking to her about how entrepreneurs can beat imposter syndrome. She's going to be sharing her point of view on the topic, and I'm really happy that she's on the show. So Carly, say hello to everyone. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys. I'm really looking forward to helping you guys get some insight on how to beat imposter syndrome.
Great. Now I'm just going to give a little intro of Carly to all the viewers. So Carly's an international speaker and consultant specializing in human behavior, based out of Vancouver. I thought you were in LA, but you're in Vancouver apparently. And she travels the world to share her message, a powerful message that no matter your story, no matter your line of work, what part of the world you are from, all people struggle with their own perceived flaws and voids, both personally and professionally. And that's okay. It's how we use that story that ultimately will define whether or not we will achieve our goals. Carly has dedicated her life to master and teach how to see beyond the surface and tap into the core essence of an individual, to uncover the deeper roots that prevent them from creating a life that is inspiring and fulfilling every day. And Carly, just reading that, there's a lot in there that aligns with what the School of Self-Worth is all about. So I'm grateful that you are my first guest, actually, in a series where I ask people, professionals and entrepreneurs from a range of backgrounds about this topic of imposter syndrome. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you again. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, all right. Let's get started with the first couple of questions. I mean, we've got a few questions, but we'll just bounce around. So let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about your journey to become an entrepreneur. And have you experienced imposter syndrome? How did you deal with it? Are you still dealing with it, or have you been able to beat it?
Mm-hmm. That's an amazing question. I'm actually really glad that you asked, not just have I dealt with it, but have I beat it yet? This is something that I think it's important for everyone to know, because yes, I have dealt with it, and we're never going to overcome it 100%, but we're meant to move at it through levels. And I want to dive deep into how that works and what that looks like, because it's actually quite an inspiring journey to keep overcoming it as we keep overcoming our challenges and moving more deeply into our purpose and our lives and where we're meant to be. So definitely 100% I've experienced it on multiple levels. And even today I have my new levels of experiencing it. And it's interesting, when I first started entrepreneurship, the imposter syndrome definitely came in around the coaching and the consulting. So what would wind up happening is I would have self-doubt. I'd have low self-worth. I would doubt my skills, my abilities, who I could work with. Could I take this person through? Was I going to be able to get to the other side? And every time I thought about that, I would think in my head, oh, but my coaches could do it. And so I had that imposter syndrome because I was comparing myself to all the individuals that I had worked with. And so it was coming in pretty hard then. So I've worked on that, which is beautiful. And I get to continue to work on it because, coaches have coaches, and I keep meeting amazing individuals that I get to connect and work with. So that's a beautiful thing that I get to continue to work on. But yeah, that part of just showing up in a consult now where it's like, can I take this person through, has shifted. And it's like, nope, I know what you're going through. I know where you want to go. And I know that I can actually help you. And this is how I'm going to take you there. So that's inspiring, where yes, you can actually overcome that imposter syndrome. Then what I say too is like the different levels. And this is where to me, it's an inspiring journey where we have the different levels of imposter syndrome that come through. So as I've, grown in my consulting practice, I've been doing it for about 11 years now. And that's been really inspiring. I'm like, okay, now I want other avenues of income. And there's other things in life that inspire me outside of just personal development. And as I've gotten into that, which funny enough, we were talking about before we got on the call, all the different things that inspired you as well, which was really cool to hear, because humans are very multifaceted. So as I'm starting to get into those other things, I see the comparisons coming in again. And as they come in again, it's like the imposter syndrome comes in again, where I'm like, oh my gosh, can I do this? Will I be able to do this? And I'll immediately start thinking of the people who I admire out in the world that have done it for themselves. And I'm like, that's my new work. This is where it's meant to go. And the cool thing is as soon as I transform that particular component, I'm going to have a new goal. I'm going to have somewhere else I want to go, and it's going to come in again. But it's as we level up, like even basically imposter syndrome levels up as well.
Yeah, listen, I agree with what you say there. And my recent experience was imposter syndrome came back for me, and I felt it when I started doing these videos on imposter syndrome. And I'm looking on Amazon at people who are published authors with doctor in front of their name and PhD at the end of the name. And I felt, oh my gosh, I'm not as good as these people, because they've got the street cred. And fortunately, I had enough training to reframe that and thought, no, this is a great thing, because it allows me to be more relatable to the people who are currently going through it. So it's an interesting point you made there, that as you go up in levels in your life, imposter syndrome seems to follow you and present you with a new challenge based on where you are. And it makes me think that the inner imposter, if that's such a thing, is actually more like a teacher that's coming along for the ride. What do you think about this idea?
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely love how you frame that. It is a teacher. And I love reframing it as well, because it's so many people, when you have a negative connotation on it, it's something that you want to get rid of, but it's something that's naturally in our life. So if we learn how to work with it, we actually learn how to love it. And it's a beautiful example you gave, because you had shifted through one component of your imposter syndrome, and then you're like, I want to talk about this, and I want to share this with people, and I want to help people to get through it. And then you're starting to compare yourself to doctors. Well, doctors is a new level of comparison to you, and that's kind of up leveling. And so internally, it's teaching you there's no reason for you to subordinate to these doctors. There's no reason to compare yourself. You're not meant to be the doctor, but you're meant to be who you're meant to be. And the clients and the people who want to learn from you specifically will find you. They actually don't want to learn from those doctors. And everything that they have, you have within you. You've just disowned it, which is why you're comparing yourself and why that imposter syndrome comes through. So I love that you say, like, yes, it's a teacher, because it was there to teach you. Don't subordinate to the doctors of the world. Go out there and be you and share the message. It's just as important. It's beautiful.
In addition to that, what I found was, because I would send emails to all these people who I was looking up to and say, can you give me some tips? And a lot of them still go through imposter syndrome. So that changed my perception. I was like, what? Hang on, you're meant to be the pro. And then it puts into play this idea of, what does it mean to be an expert? What does it mean to be an authentic expert? And I've come to really enjoy this idea that you are this, I guess, eternal student, and that it's okay that you will make mistakes and that you will feel out of your depth along the way, because that actually helps me to grow. And so I guess that, puts out a really nice, humbling and human sort of energy to the conversation when you say it's all right if imposter syndrome comes back and hits you, even after you've been a seasoned expert or you've been doing your thing for such a long time.
Yes, it's a beautiful way to put it, because that translates into every area of life and everything that you're wanting to learn and grow in. And when we think about imposter syndrome, it's like being an entrepreneur. If you start out young as an entrepreneur, like I started out young as an entrepreneur, and I'm not a parent yet, right? I have certainty as soon as I have kids, imposter syndrome is going to come in on what it looks like to be a mom.
I want to hear more about your story of how you got to where you are, and tell us some of the points where it was like, oh my gosh, I'm a big fat fake. Did that ever happen?
Yes. So feeling like the fake is a lot of times. I remember when I first started coaching and I would have my first clients, I'd be on the phone and I would be so afraid that they would figure out that I had just started. And I felt like a fake in the regards to, I just haven't done it long enough. I haven't done it long enough. So I was comparing myself to all the people out there who had done it long enough. And the amazing thing is I wasn't meant to be with them because I had done it for a long period of time. I was meant to be with them because there were specific things that I knew that were going to help them. And for any entrepreneur out there who's a coach or consultant, I'll tell you the best advice that I could give you is just stay focused on your client. In those calls, as long as you're focused on your client and their results, the imposter syndrome will shift in that short period of time, and you can be present and give them the results that they actually are looking for. Then refocus on yourself later.
In addition to that, now you said you're not a parent yet. Maybe we should get you back on the show when you are. But you know, you think I wouldn't be, being a parent is not going to be a problem for me. But maybe when you first go home, I can imagine there are parents out there, they take the baby home for the first time, and no matter the amount of prep and training, then it's like, oh my gosh, what am I meant to do? I don't know what I'm doing. So as 100%. Let us say, pre-parent, what is your experience of, you know, becoming a parent and having imposter syndrome?
Well, even that component it's interesting because it's something that I've been working on now, because I'm planning on becoming a parent in the next few years, right? That's the game plan. So it'll happen when it happens. And when it does happen, I've actually been working on that component where, who do I compare myself to? Who do I perceive has more knowledge, more insights, has more know-how than I do in regards to parenting? And then, you know, I use my strategy, I use my systems to make sure I go through there to stop the comparison, because that also is a component. And to the degree that I haven't had like a lifestyle where I'm a parent every day, there are certain things that I've gone through with kids, and I've been very close and connected, that I have that experience. When I disown those parts of myself, imposter syndrome comes in and I say, I can't do this. But when I own the experiences that I've had, like I said, even though I haven't been a parent, I've been very blessed to have children around me, very young ones, and be responsible for them many, many times. When I own that part of myself, I realize, you've got this. You're still going to have surprises, and that's normal. But also, even in business, like, you're handling surprises all the time. And as you know, working with like mental health and stuff and self-worth, we get some pretty big surprises sometimes that come to us, and things that we work through. And so
both for our clients and for ourselves.
Both. Yes. So knowing that we have that capacity, that also translates there. So it's we don't have anything missing inside us. Imposter syndrome comes in when we think we're missing something and someone else has it and we don't. But when we realize that we have it, it's not even a matter of, I was talking to someone about wealth like this today, where she was talking about investing and all these dynamics, and she hasn't been accustomed to diving into that realm, that area of life. But she has a high value on other things in life, and personal development and growth and health and nutrition. And when you dive in there, she's got the mathematics, she knows strategies, she knows all of the components and all the different mindset tools that you would need to actually dive into wealth. And we're talking about it, and it's not even a matter of her not being able to do it. It's just changing the form she's doing it in, and focusing more on the wealth building components for her. That's it. And it's interesting because we all have that inside of ourselves, all of us.
I want to just add on, or I want to go from a point that you said there. You know, it's the form or expression. I think I've heard this before. It's like the cosmological constant in the world is that there is never any more or any less energy in the world. It just changes form. So imposter syndrome is the expression or a form of some energy. And that is neither a good thing or a bad thing, because you can change the form or the energy, and it changes the form. So I like to reframe that imposter syndrome is a sign of a really good imagination. Because if you can believe, like, for the people watching who don't know, imposter syndrome is a fear that some part of you will be exposed and people will find out that you're a fake or a phony in some regard, usually your intelligence or your accomplishments. And that usually comes even despite the evidence around you. So some people will still feel like they are fake despite evidence all around them that says they give great value, people compliment them, recognize them. So even though there's evidence, they still have this incredible imagination to believe something about themselves that is just not true. So that's why I say imposter syndrome is a sign of a great imagination. And we can change the form. We can go, well, if I can imagine myself to be an imposter, what else or who else could I imagine myself to be? And I want to ask you, Carly, if you could break down a strategy that you've used either with yourself or with clients to help them to balance out the way they perceive themselves, especially if they go through imposter syndrome.
Yes. So the best thing to do is to notice your language. Your language is going to be a direct indicator of where imposter syndrome is coming through, but also to find out the specifics of the comparison. So, when I was talking about the imposter syndrome, it is all around comparisons. Every time you have imposter syndrome, you're going to be comparing yourself to one or many individuals out there in the world. And everyone does it all the time. The language that we see or hear in ourselves is actually going to give you direction on how to find it. So whenever you're saying, I should do something, I'm supposed to, I have to, I need to, I must, this language specifically is indicating that you're perceiving someone else does something better than you. And the imposter syndrome is you're trying to actually take what they do and put it in your life, which means you're not being you. And you've got an imposter in the form of the comparison, the outside world. So whenever you use that language, the should, supposed to, need to, have to, must, what I want you guys to do is actually ask yourself that question, according to who? I stop myself in my tracks and I go, according to who? I should according to who? And immediately one person or many people will come up in my head. And so when I would think about like the initial stage with the coaching and consulting when I first started, and I would be like, I should be doing this with them, or I should be doing that with them. And these thoughts would come up in the head. Afterwards, I'd check in and be like, according to who? This coach, this coach, this coach, right? And then I know specifically who I'm comparing myself to. And what that comparison means is that, like you said, we're not actually owning that we have those parts in ourselves. So there are disowned parts. Even though people out there are saying like, you have this in you, for me, it was like, you are that coach, you are that consultant, you're great at this. I still didn't own it to the same degree that the people that I was admiring and comparing myself to had it. And that's why the imposter syndrome stayed. So when we ask ourselves those quality questions to ensure that we're not disowning those parts and we're owning it inside ourselves, and we see with certainty that we have it to the same degree as that other individual, the imposter syndrome will 100% shift in that specific area. It's amazing. And all that brain noise around it, and that brain noise, which can be quite distracting in your business and everyday life, will completely dissipate with it as well. And the beautiful part is when that shifts, you show up more authentically as you. It's just natural. And these parts of you that were uncomfortable before, all of a sudden feel really comfortable and certain, and you're very comfortable in your skin. And I think that's one of my favorite things about doing those deep dives and doing the work, is just being able to show up. And the biggest change is like, I just feel comfortable now. Like, I don't know, I'm not stressed, I'm not worried, I just feel really comfortable. Let's get to work.
Yeah. I'm going to clarify what you just said, and also for the audience who are watching. So we're talking to Carly Pepin, everybody, and we've been talking about entrepreneurship, specifically if you are an entrepreneur or a coach or a consultant and you've been through imposter syndrome or you're going through it now. Okay, Carly, I'm going to try and clarify the strategy that you just told people to do, that if you're going through imposter syndrome, that there's one simple question you can ask yourself, and that is, who are you comparing yourself to? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Or you said according to who? Like people would compare themselves, go, oh, I feel like a fake. And you would then say to ask yourself, according to who? Who do you feel like a fake compared to? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And I have used a similar sort of strategy, and questions are just great because it jolts the train of thinking. And what I've noticed in the past is that my language is quite vague, and other people, and so I'll say, oh, I'm not as good as X, Y, Z, and it's actually an imagined person in my head. It's not actually a real person. And when I say, okay, so who's the person specifically, and when, and all of these great specific questions, that you're right, the imposter syndrome just sort of fizzles. And then you do get to that point where you say, well, I actually feel all right again. So I think you're going to agree that imposter syndrome is really just a perception sort of game, right?
Yes, it is. And shifting your perception shifts the imposter syndrome.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
All right, let me see if I got another question here for you. Oh yeah, okay. So, what do you wish you knew about imposter syndrome if you were at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey? Like if you were going through it and you knew it, what would you have liked to know?
I would have loved to know about the shoulds and the have tos and supposed tos. That language has helped me tremendously, not just with myself, but also with my clients. It's like every time I hear a client say should, I just write that
Yeah.
down and go back and it's like, yeah, according to who? Should according to who? Let's dive in right there. So that language has been just such a help for me, and just asking that question, like according to who, because it gives me permission to reframe it. Okay, well, I think I should do this, but what would I actually really love to do instead? Like, I don't actually want to do this, and that's not the truth. It's a need, should, have to, supposed to. It's imposter syndrome. So what would I love to do instead? And I reframe it also in that moment as well, just to give myself the opportunity to say, I actually don't want to do this. I would love to do this. I'm going to go live this life because this is where I'm inspired and fulfilled and alive. And I'm
Beautiful.
going to let you keep doing this and delegate that to you.
Yep. Oh, Carly, we're going to wrap it up and soon, but there's two things I want you to finish with. Number one, a tip or a takeaway for people watching, and number two, tell people how they can get in contact with you, and maybe you got some offer you'd like to tell people about.
Yeah. So the tip is don't ever give up on continuing on that journey of overcoming each step of imposter syndrome. The degree of the one that you overcome now to the one that you're going to overcome in 10 years is going to be astronomical. And you'll look back and you'll be like, man, I can't believe, like, if I had walked away from overcoming that one, I wouldn't be sitting where I am today, knowing what I know today and having the life that I have today. So overcoming it is just, it changes your life. I can't stress this enough. It changes your life, and it gives you permission to do things that you can't even imagine that you can do right now. That's how much imposter syndrome blocks your vision and your long-term goals and your long-term vision. And the more you clear it, the more you actually tap into your life purpose on this planet, which is pretty magnificent. So that would be my biggest tip. Don't stop the work.
Don't stop the work. Great. Yeah. All right. And where can people get hold of you? And do you have something you want to offer people? I'm going to put your web address on the page. Is that cool?
Yeah, that would be perfect. So they can,
CarlyPepin.com.
yes.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
They can get a hold of me there. They can reach out to me one-on-one. And yeah, there's some content that I have on there. I have free content all the time on my Facebook, which there's direct access there. And we have workshops coming up. I do workshops every other month where we actually help people transform and utilize a system to transform this imposter syndrome and help them get to the next level, which is really inspiring. So that's available too if people are interested.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, everybody, please go to CarlyPepin.com. It's Carly, Pepin.com. And Carly, it's been great having you on the show. I would love to have you back on the show again. This has been a lot of fun. And yeah, so we're gonna say goodbye to everybody. Today we've been talking about how entrepreneurs can beat imposter syndrome with Carly Pepin. And I wish everybody a great day. Carly and I are going to say goodbye, but to everybody who's watching, but we're going to chat after we stop going live. So see you later, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks, Carly.
Thank you.